If we go into the cell, will you go with us? Oh, Joseph, you did not ask me to cross the river with you. You did not ask me to come to Carthage. You did not ask me to come to jail with you. Do you think that I would desert you now? But I'll tell you what I will do. If you're condemned to be hung for treason, I'll be hanged in your place, a life for a life, and you can go free. Willard, you can't do that. But I will. Well, it was just after that I heard the discharge of firearms in front of the jail. I pulled the curtain aside, saw there a band of perhaps 100 men with blackened faces. The Carthage Grays fired their muskets into the air and then were thrown aside. We heard the rattle of footsteps in the entryway and musketry being fired up the stairway. Immediately, the four of us came across the room and put our weight against the door to prevent an entry. Someone came up the stairway, tried the door handle, thought the door locked, and fired a ball through the door. Immediately, three of us leaped back, myself, Joseph, and John Taylor, here toward the front of the room. Hiram stayed here by the door, trying to hold it shut. Someone fired a ball through the door. That ball hit Hiram in the left side of the nose and knocked him back partway across the room. When he got back about this far, another ball fired apparently through the window hit Hiram in the right side of the back. It passed through his back and smashed the watch in his vest pocket. He fell to the ground here saying, "I am a dead man." Joseph, seeing his brother on the floor now, crossed the room, bent down beside him and said, "Oh, my poor dear brother Hiram." Then, moving very purposefully, he came to the coat in the corner, took the pistol out of the pocket, opened the door just slightly, reached around the casing of the door and snapped the trigger 6 times. 3 times the gun fired and 3 times it misfired. 3 men were wounded. He then stepped back. John Taylor now had picked up the rascal beater and was standing here by the door attempting to deflect the muzzles, and the barrels of those rifles were being thrust into the room, and the doorway was filled with them. Bursts of flame the width of my arm, noise and confusion, threats and screams and curses. John Taylor realized that it was utterly hopeless in the room. Only extreme cowardice had kept the mob out until now, and he knew they'd rush the room at any moment. He decided there might be a friend outside the window, some hope of escape, so he crossed the room till he got to the window. When he got here, he was shot in the thigh of the left leg. That ball evidently severed a nerve. It paralyzed John Taylor for a moment, and he found himself falling out the window. As he was falling, someone outside the window took careful aim and fired a ball at his heart. That ball hit the watch in his vest pocket and stopped it at exactly 5:16 and 26 seconds. The force of that shot knocked John Taylor back into the room, and he fell here to the floor and began to crawl under the bed. While he was crawling and while he was there under the bed, on his face with his head toward this wall, he was shot 3 more times, once in the wrist of the left hand, once in the calf of the left leg, and a piece of flesh the size of that fist was shot out of his left hip, splattering the wall with blood and gore. By now I had picked up the rascal beater and was attempting to do what I could to protect Joseph and myself and John Taylor, knocking down the barrels of those muskets, trying to keep people from firing effectively. Evidently, someone outside the room, or many men, were trying to reach around the doorway this way and fire left-handed into the corner where we were standing and hiding. Suddenly, at that moment, Joseph, who was behind me in the corner in what was the safest part of the room, left that corner and walked to the center of the room, thinking, no doubt, if he could get out of the room, he might save the lives of those of us who are still here. He came here, dropped his pistol on the floor near Hiram, and then, coming across the room to the window, he was shot 3 times and offered his final prayer. As he went out the window, he said, "Oh, Lord, my God." Well, as his feet went out the window, my head went in, for I was determined to see the end of him whom I loved. He hit the ground, a dead man. I came back into the room and then looked again for several seconds, heedless of the danger, to make sure that he was dead. I was fully satisfied that he was. I came back into the room and started across it again toward the doorway when John Taylor called, "Wait, doctor, take me with you." I pressed on my way till I found the door to the cell unlocked. Then came back across the room, caught John Taylor under my arm and dragged him into the cell and placed him in the furthermost cell in the corner. Then I took a filthy mattress off the bed and laid it on top of him, and I said, "John Taylor, it's a hard case to lay you on the floor in your condition, but in case your wounds are not fatal, I want you to live to tell this story." I then came back and stood here in the doorway, waiting for the mob, absolutely certain that they would return at any moment and kill me. It was as I was standing here, the door opened and the door below as well, that someone yelled the thing that saved my life. Someone outside the jail, I do not know who, but someone heard a horse and yelled, "The Mormons are coming." Well, the mob lived in great fear of the Nauvoo Legion. They took off for the timber immediately. In fact, it was only a matter of hours before most of the Carthaginians had fled the town. But as I stood here then, I suddenly realized that I was not going to die. And as that realization came, the understanding came with it, because I remembered a prophecy, one that I had forgotten for months and months. A prophecy uttered by that man lying beside the well outside the window, who had said to me, "Willard, the time will come when bullets will fly around you like hail. You will see friends fall to the right and to the left of you. John Taylor shot to pieces in the cell, Hiram dead here on the floor, and Joseph outside the window. You will see friends fall to the right and to the left of you, but there will not be so much as a hole in your garment." And then that question came, inescapable but unavoidable. Why? 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 Well, I got an answer to that question. An answer for all of us who asked, who wanted to know. An answer from the prophet's mother, Lucy Mack Smith. I sent word to Nauvoo that day, the 27th, informing those in Nauvoo about what had happened in Carthage. Lucy Mack Smith began to pray and to prepare herself that very moment for the ordeal of seeing the bodies of her sons, begging God for the strength to endure, steeling every fiber and nerve of her being. Even so, on the morning of the 29th of June, when we brought her into the basement of the Hamilton House Hotel and we opened those caskets and she saw the bullet-riddled bodies of her boys, even with all that preparation, when she saw them, she fell back and cried out, "My God! My God, why hast thou forsaken this family?" And she got an answer. An answer from the still, small voice, that sweet, understanding voice of the Spirit, speaking in perfect love and mildness. "Lucy, Lucy, Lucy, I have taken them unto myself, that they might have rest." And suddenly there came into the mind of Lucy Mack Smith the memory of a promise she'd received in Missouri a few years before. A promise that within 5 years Joseph would be out of the power of his enemies. Lucy realized that the time was past and that the promise was fulfilled. And then she saw, or thought she saw, her sons dressed in their white robes of glory, standing before her and saying, "Mother, weep not for us. We have overcome the world with love."